Welcome back. A big U.S. telco company, Verizon, recently said it would bundle several of its streaming services and price those bundles attractively for customers. It sounds reminiscent of the bundling that cable TV providers have offered for many, many years. That was something that streaming services were intended to counter. Can we expect the same thing from Canadian telcos? To talk about it further, we're joined by Bruce Croxon. He, of course, is co-founder of Round 13 Capital. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So what has happened specifically? Verizon is offering a $10 bundle that puts together Netflix and Warner Brothers Discovery Max service. These are the ad-supported versions of both of those, and it's offering a second bundle that combines the ad-free version of Disney Plus with the ad-supported tiers of Hulu, ESPN Plus, Netflix, and Max. What's happening here? Well,
yeah, there's a lot going on, I think. But to your point off the top, I think this is the beginning of what we're going to see a ton of bundling, right? And I think, you know, before we get into the why and what we might expect in Canada, it might be useful just to remind the viewers how the industry works when you're a content producer. Because you've got your balance sheet and then you've got your income statement. So let's use Netflix as an example. It's tempting to look at Netflix's quarter and say, oh, Netflix made a profit this quarter because the number of subscribers and the revenue they generated made up for whatever expenses they had in running the company. But when you take that profit and go over to the balance sheet side and realize how much cash they had to use, the recent strike period aside when everything was shut down, but in normal production times, how much cash was having to be used to produce that content, it's very rare that you see the profit covering the cost of production.
Right.
And Netflix isn't alone. Now, Disney can hide behind other assets, and Warner can hide behind other assets. They have a lot in their own library, which keeps the cost of production down. But in general, it's a very, very expensive model to feed the insatiable demand that you and I and the rest of Canada and the U.S. has for screen time. And I brought a couple of stats. I think where our screen time is up 50% since 2013 alone. We spend 3 hours just on streaming services on average a day. So we're insatiable. And especially during the recent strike period, where you've had to get your fix, you've had to go to a number of different services. And we were saying before we went on air, you looked at your monthly bill, you said, geez, I can't wait for some bundling because this is getting out of control.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned to you, my wife and I are certainly subscribing to more streaming services than we thought we would when all this began several years ago. We thought we'd pick a couple and stick with it, and now we're up to 5 or 6. And so this is very reminiscent of cable television when years ago you looked at your cable bill and you said, look at that, do I really need all these channels? And you were open to the idea of bundling channels.
or you're going to drop some, right? And the thought of dropping some and subscribers going down for the companies that need every single penny they can to cover the cost of content that's a very scary notion. That's a very scary look forward. Now, thankfully, the trend is on everybody's side because, as I mentioned earlier, we're spending more time online. We're spending more time consuming content. And there seems to be, like I said, an insatiable demand for what these companies can put out. So I think, yes, what old is new, used to be bundled together. We got mad because there was so much content that we didn't want. The data is getting better, and they're better able to understand what exactly we do want. So you're seeing the telcos come in and say, okay, this audience wants this, this, and this. Let's put it together in a way that we make sure they don't churn as a subscriber, because we need that revenue.
Part of this is that the telcos do offer these services on their services, but you don't have to. If you want to subscribe to Netflix, you certainly don't have to have a telco subscription, a cable or fibe subscription.
Correct. Right? So the deal better be good, right? And so in this particular example, my guess is that Verizon is subsidizing the cost in part to the streaming services in order to hang on to their subscribers. And they're in a very competitive market as well. The whole game, Rogers-Bell, flip back and forth. Who's got the better deal this month? They need to hang on to these subscribers, and content is emerging, and streaming services are emerging is probably the best way to help do that.
Will we see this in Canada, do you think?
I believe we will, yeah, because I think the war and the war for subscribers is every bit as intense here. You've got Shaw and Rogers recently getting together, but you've got TELUS out west, and Rogers and Bell going hard at it. So I would expect we'll see the same thing. This is just sort of the tip of the iceberg. good time to be a consumer.
Right. Years ago, not so many years ago, but several years, things moved rapidly. The telcos really did not like these services at all. They, in particular, didn't like the way they were. There was a hands-off regulatory approach to the so-called over-the-top providers, and that was the phrase that was used: over the top.
That's right.
Of regulations. Netflix and the others would come in over the top of the regulatory framework.
And they were bypassing the thing that kept them alive, like Bell Networks, right? Where you'd have to pay every month. And, well, I don't want that. I don't want that. I can get this all on Netflix. And they saw their revenue per subscriber, which is a very important metric, start to decline. So I think it makes all the sense in the world that they're going to want to try and hang on to their base, wake up to the fact that a good chunk of their base is leaving to go a la carte. How can we retain them? Well, we got to partner with them. It's time to, stop the war and pretend that this isn't happening. Let's partner with them and try and hang on to as many customers as we can.
The other interesting thing is the return of advertising. That caught me by surprise. But how much traction are the ad-supported tiers getting, where you pay a smaller monthly fee and you have to sit through some ads?
Yeah, I think they're doing well, and the reason is, as we talked about off the top, it's getting expensive, right? If I want to get all the content that I can and when I want it, how I want it, it's going to cost me as a consumer a lot of money. So what's one way I can reduce my monthly burn is I can tolerate an ad-driven service, just like the old days when you used to watch television. So it is really interesting how this circle it's really gone full circle.
Thanks for framing it up for us, Bruce.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's Bruce Croxon.